Welcome to the tutorial for the Worthing dress. Now there are a few options on this pattern, so I'm just going to talk you through those. As well as having an optional sleeve, you've got two different necklines here. So you've got a square one and a V-neck. You can see there, other than the shape of the neckline, they're exactly the same piece. So this is the only piece that's different if you want to have the different shape of neckline. So you can make your choice. And then, you've just got another option for future choice. This is the skirt, the front skirt. Now, the other part of this pattern that's different is you've got the pleats marked on the actual skirt for the 16 to 22. And you can see I've marked in red pen the size that I'm going to be doing today, just to make it clear when I'm putting my markers in for where I need my pleats to be. You can see they're clearly numbered. And I've separated them out to try and make it less confusing. So you've got these templates. Now, if you want to do between a size 8 and a 14, this is the template that you will use. And again, you can see all the sizes between 8 and 14 are marked on here. So you'll just need to lay this on top of the original skirt pattern. You can see there's very clearly a line there where it all matches up. You just lay it on, match up your centre fronts, and you can just pin it on, so you can still use the other sizes if you want to. But if you pin it to the top of your pattern, then you use these lines as your reference for your pleats for those sizes. Now, this one is for the larger sizes, 24 to 30. And again, you've got these first pleats are all the same, so it all matches up again. You can cut around the outside if you want to, or you can just sort of hold it up to a window and place it. You can see through. But you've got all your sizes on there for any size between 24 and 30. So now we've established all the extras, we're going to start with the pocket bag. Here's my front skirt again. And as I said before, I've marked out my pleats and with a red pen so I can be clear where they are, and I've put little snips into the seam allowance there and also at the centre front so that I know where my centre front is. I know this is my front skirt because it's got that diagonal shaping there to put my pocket bag on. This is my pocket bag piece. Let's unpin this. Oops, there's one pin still. Okay, so we only need one of these pocket bags. And what I've done, rather than put stay stitching in, I've just put a little strip of interfacing in there. So it's a bit wibbly wobbly because I've just literally cut it just to stop it stretching as it's on the bias. And the pockets, if you're going to use them a lot, they're going to get a lot of wear and they might stretch. So match up the angles there with your pocket bag. Pop some pins in, and you're going to start stitching 1 centimetre from the raw edge, which is the seam allowance. There we go. You can see it's gone through the little bit of interfacing I've put there just to stabilise it. And I'm going to grade, by which I mean trim down this seam allowance of the pocket by half. Just the pocket side. There we go. And then I'm going to fold the pocket over the seam allowance, give it a quick press, and then I'm going to, ensuring that seam allowance is under the pocket, stitch really close to the edge there. There we go, right on the edge there, just to hold that seam allowance down towards the pocket. That gives us that lovely crisp edge. So there we go, that's stitched. You can see there, very close to the edge. And I'm just going to fold it over and I'll give that a little press into place. There we are, one pocket bag in place, nice crisp edge. I'll show you on the right side as well because that looks really smart now. There you go, you've got a lovely finish to that pocket. So next up are the pleats on the front skirt. So here's my front skirt with my pocket bags attached to each side. tuck those under, and I've got my pattern piece here to reference for my pleat notches. You'll see there's two long ones and then a short, there's a long one, a short one, a long one. So two long ones and a short one make a pleat. You basically want to take each one of the long ones and put them together with the little one at the back, but I'll show you. Let's do this one by one. So I'm laying it on top of my fabric here. Remember, you've got that centimetre already gone for seam allowance. That's my centre front notch. So I've got long, short, long, and I want to match the two longs together. So, oh, short-term memory is terrible. Let's double check that before I do it. Long, short, long. So, long folds to meet the other one. There we go. So that other notch is at the back of the pleat on the fold. Pop that pin in. I'll match those edges up nicely when I come to stitch them. And then I go to the next notch. That's the back, that's the front. So notch to notch. So first to third, second one is behind. Pop a pin in. And then we've got the last pleat here, which the long notch is right next to the pocket. So we've got long, short, long. So I'm going to fold that over, put those together. So I've got my two notches matching to form the pleat, and then the other notch at the back of the pleat. And this pleat edge should match the pocket. So 3 pleats is what you should have on each side. That's my centre front. So long, short, long. I'm going to fold that back. Oh, no, I've skipped one there. So long, short, long. 2 together, 1 at the back of the pleat. On the smaller sizes, the pleats may overlap a little bit for that central box pleat. Don't worry about that, that's fine. Long, short, long. 2 together. Fold and pin. There you go. So you're just folding them in the other direction, away from the centre front. So I've got 3 and 3. That's my centre front. 3 pleats going one way, 3 pleats going the other way. Now I'm just going to stay stitch these down. So ever so carefully trying to line up these raw edges as best I can so that it will hang nicely when it's all together. And just stitching a centimetre from the edge to secure them in place. Much less fiddly than trying to do all the pleats and pin everything all together all in one go. There we are. So you can still see the centre front notch. I'm going to take all those pins out. Okay, so let's attach the top bodice to the skirt, the front skirt. That's my pleated bit. There's my centre front. These are my pockets. My pockets are open at the moment. This is my front bodice. I've chosen to do the V-neck on this one. I've put some interfacing there to hold the curve so it doesn't stretch, and I've marked a little bit there at the point, but we'll go over that later. So centre fronts together. Just going to pin these bits together here, and then I'll show you with this one. We want to fold back our centimetre seam allowance. There we go. So fold back your centimetre seam allowance, and that should meet where that pocket bag is sewn in. So if I show you on the other side, it'll probably be clearer. So there we go. That's your centimetre seam allowance. That's where you want it to be. So open it out to pin it, because you're going to stop sewing, when you get to that stitch line. So again on this side, you want your centimetre seam allowance, and you want to pin your pocket to it there, so that you've got that extra centimetre overlap. And then we're going to put a pin in there. So we start stitching where that stitch line for the pocket is. We're going to stitch over our stitch line for the pleats, and we're going to finish where this line is here. Okay, so I'm opening out the pocket there, starting stitching from the stitch line that's holding the pocket bag on. I'm stitching over that stitch line that I'd put in to hold the pleats, and I'm stopping just where, again, that diagonal stitch line is attaching the pocket bag. So there you go. I've stopped and started a centimetre, and I've stopped right there on that stitch line on the other side. So let's look at this on the right side. So the pleats are all lovely. You can see that that's all attached perfectly. So now we're going to stitch the side front panel. Here we go, one pair. I've marked my notches in red again before I've cut it so that I know where they are for my size. Unpin, we only need one. Back to my skirt and my front bodice. Now I've overlocked this seam here and I've pressed it upwards towards the bodice, just given it a quick press before I'm doing this next piece. And I'm going to find my notches first. There's 2 across the bust which help get the ease in the right place. So I'm going to pop those in first. Pin at each point. Then the shoulder. And then I'm going to work down towards the pocket bag. This side panel has the pocket, the other part of the pocket attached to it. It's all in one. So carefully pinning. Now, going back to this point, that is where I want to stitch. I want my stitch line to come across exactly there to get the nicest, cleanest seam. So I'm going to be pinning. It should be your centimetre seam allowance, so it shouldn't be difficult to do, but you can always mark it clearly if yours is slightly out. So I'm going to start from the top and work down. Let's just show you again from the other side so you can see where that needs to go. So from the top all the way down, centimetre seam allowance, and of course I'm going across. I'm going to hit that point. There we go, where the pocket bags are sewn to the bodice and the skirt. So it's that point exactly there. I'm going to stitch down and then stitch across the bottom of the pocket as well. Okay, let's go. We're starting at the shoulder, working down. Centimetre seam allowance as usual. And off we go. Need to be careful and just gently ease in over the bust between those 2 notches. Matching up the raw edges nicely, trying to get it as accurate as possible. And then we're getting to that point where we want to stitch exactly through the edge of the pocket there, and then we're going down the side of the pocket bag. And then I'm going to stitch across the bottom of the pocket too. There we go. So let's take these pins out. Looks like a nice even seam line. Lovely. And it goes across the bottom of the pocket too. Now let's look at it from the right side. Check it looks all right. We've got no puckers or anything. And I'm going to pin these 3 bits here together. So it's the skirts, the pocket bag, and that piece of bodice that comes down in to form the other side of the pocket. So I'm just going to put a little stitch in there to hold it all together. Let's just double check this seam is okay. It looks good to me. Looks nice and smooth, pocket works. So I'm going to overlock this edge now and give it a press. That's what it looks like when it's pressed. It's looking great. Nice and flat. Hand goes in there. Just need to stitch this down now. There we go. That just makes it easier when we come to join the other part of the skirt. Next job is to construct the back bodice. So we've got two pieces here, side back and a centre back, which is cut on the fold. And this is your underarm curve. And I've marked my notches in red again so that it's clear where everything goes together. So we need the back piece and one of the side backs. So those edges just lie nicely together, and I'm just going to stitch down the centimetre seam allowance. There we go, nicely together. Just forms a bit of back interest and a nice flattering line. I'm going to overlock this now and give it a press. There we go. Very smart seam. Okay, so now we're going to do the pleats of the back skirt. Now I've got my pattern piece here. So again, skirt, back skirt, cut one to the fold. I've marked my centre back with a little snip there, and I've again marked all my pleats in a colour. So all the pleats for all the sizes are on this back panel. So you want to find your size and mark that. And there again you can see I've snipped into the seam allowance a little bit to mark them all. You've still got one small one and two long ones. So the two long ones go together, the little back one just marks the back of the pleat. So that's the front and that. So I'm going to put my finger there so I can't forget where I put it this time. So two long ones, so you've got three together. There we go. We're going this way. So two notches together, one notch at the back of the pleat and pin. Now the next three, the two furthest away together and the little notch at the back and pin. And the same again, three notches, these two together, that one at the back and pin. So that's one side. Three pleats to each side, that's my centre back. Here we go, three notches, two outer ones go together. Going the other way this time. Three notches, two outer ones go together. Put a pin in, three notches, two outer ones go together again. And that's our three pleats on that side. So let's check this looks okay. Three pleats, they look equal. Let's stitch those down, keep them in place. Perfect. So now the pleats are done, we're going to stitch our back bodice to the back skirt. There's our skirt with our lovely pleats in, our centre back notch there. This is my bodice, my back bodice. So right sides together, find those centre back notches and put them together. Quick pin. And then moving along the pleats, match the raw edges, and if your pleats are correct they should match perfectly. Raw edges together, working our way out. There we go, they perfectly the same length there. And then we just need to stitch it again using centimetre seam allowance. I'm going to stitch over that stitch line that I did to hold the pleats in place. There we go. Overlock, and then I'm going to press that seam upwards towards the bodice, towards the neckline. Oh, bit of thread there. Let's get rid of that. There we go, fits perfectly. Job done. So now we're going to do the shoulder seams. There's my back dress, shoulders there. And this is my front dress, matching these shoulders up. Now the important thing here is to match the seam lines. So I'm going to pop those together, put a pin in there to start with, and then I'm going to work out from that point. There we go. So again, centimetre seam allowance. I'm going to stitch across those. There we go. And then you can overlock or zigzag these set and press them open if you want to, but I'm going to just do them together and press them towards the back. There we go, nicely pressed. Now we're going to construct the facing. So remember to select the pattern piece appropriate for the neckline that you're making. I'm doing the V-neck. The back neck facing is the same for both necklines. So this is my V-neck one. And as you can see, I have interfaced these to stop them stretching. I'm just going to match them here at the shoulders. Quick pin, centimetre seam allowance, just to attach those two pieces. And then I'm going to press this open. And I'll overlock the outside edge of mine. There we go. Nice easy job. So next we're going to attach the facing to the neckline. Here's my dress. I've opened it all out and you've got the neckline in the middle. Here's my facing. So I'm going to attach it at the shoulder first, matching those seam lines together. And then that point. And then the other shoulder, and working your way around slowly, getting it as flat and as even as possible, matching your centre back notches for the back neckline. There we go, and I'm going to stitch around again, centimetre seam allowance, all the way on the inside, but I'm going to do it from the other side because, as I sort of briefly showed you before, I've marked this point on with my ruler exactly a centimetre from the raw edge so that I get a really nice central sharp point to my V-neck so it doesn't look off. So following it around now, I'm going to get to that V. Let's give that a little look. Oh, I'm going to do one more stitch. So foot down again, one more stitch, and then needle down, foot up, and I'm going to pivot on that corner of the V, and I'm going to go all around the rest of the neckline. It's worth saying at this point you could trim this facing right down if you wanted and have it as a tiny, almost binding. You don't have to have a big facing. Now I'm going to unpin. I'm going to clip into that V. That looks pretty good. So snip into that as closely to the stitching as I can get without actually cutting it, and then I'm just going to do some little snips in every centimetre or two, closer together where the curves are tighter, and then I'm trimming the facing side down of the seam allowance. Do that all the way around, trimming any seam allowances as you go. So once you've done all of that all the way around, you want to fold your facing over your seam allowance again, and you're going to stitch this seam allowance here to your facing. You can always press this first if it helps. I'm just going to go for it. So I'm pulling that seam allowance from underneath so that it's under that facing. So I'm pulling it to the right in this instance, and I'm opening up that seam, stretching it out so that it's nice and flat as I go. You can just about see there the seam allowance being attached to the facing. So here we go. Let's have a closer look. There you go. You can see the 2 rows of stitching, and there it is on the actual facing. So now I'm going to press this, and I've pinned as well a few areas because I'm going to leave my facing big and I'm going to stitch through this shoulder seam, but I'm going to do it from this side. So from the right side I'm going to stitch in that little ditch there made by the seam allowance, and on this side too. You could do some lovely top stitching all around your facing as well, which would look really, really nice and hold your facing down completely. There we go. But on this one, I'm just going to attach it on the shoulders just to hold it down. There we go. A nice crisp neckline with a beautiful V. So now we're going to do a bit of sleeve prep. It's worth saying at this point, you don't have to put the sleeve in. You can just have it as is and just hem it. But I'm going to show you the sleeve for this one. So double notch denotes the back of the sleeve, single the front, and you've got these little angled bits at the bottom because it folds up. It's quite a deep hem on this one. So all I'm going to do to prep them is I'm going to fold it up and give it a press. And then I'm going to unfold that and fold it up the centimetre seam allowance and give it another press. So it's just a nice deep hem really. This just means it makes it easier to hem it once it's all in the dress. So now we're going to insert this sleeve. Well, it's more of a sleeve extension because it's a very shallow sleeve head. So here we go. This is my armhole. You can see back and front with the 2 and the 1 notches. So I've got 1 and I've got 2. So I'm just going to lay this on. If at this point you're wanting to exclude the sleeve, then I would just hem your armhole. That's the one that matches the shoulder seam. And then we want to match the underarm again for the front. There we go. So centimetre seam allowance, stitching from one end to the other. It's a really easy insertion this because it's such a shallow curve. Just makes that sleeve a little bit longer for anybody who wants to. It's another pattern option. Right, pins out, and I'm going to check there's no tuckers or pucks. We're gonna overlock and press. There we go. Nicely overlocked, press that seam towards the cuff. I've still got those folds for when I need to hem my sleeve. So next is a side seam, which sort of incorporates the sleeve if you've put the sleeve extension on. So I'm going to match these seams. Oh, incidentally, I've overlocked these before I'm sewing, and I've put snips in that tight underarm curve, and I've pulled it open as I've done the overlocking to sort of allow for a bit more movement. So I've done that both sides so that it can kind of lay flatter. So as I've got the sleeves in, I'm pinning that seam first. That's where your seam would start if you didn't put the sleeve extension on. And then I'm going to match these edges as closely as possible and put plenty of pins in under that arm curve. Pinning all the way down. This is where you're pleased that all those pocket layers are all stay stitched together nicely, so you don't have to fiddle around trying to get those all together in the right place. Work your way all the way down to the hem. So I'm going to start stitching from the cuff, centimetre seam allowance, all the way down under the arm, through the pocket, towards the hem. Here we go. And take your time around the underarm curve, make sure the fabric layers are together as best as possible. Keep those edges nice and neat. Open up that curve as you stitch around. Lovely. So here we are. Have a quick look at that. That looks okay. I'm going to press this seam open. There we go. It's all pressed. So now I'm going to turn it through and just check it all. Now if you've clipped and stitched your underarm as I suggested, it should be a lovely smooth curve. Look. Fabulous. So next it's the cuffs. We're nearly there, chaps. So you should still have these creases pressed in from earlier, which will make this part easier. So you just want to re-fold your cuff and pop some pins in. There we go. And just work your way around. Holding that seam allowance down. There we go. I'm going to work on this from the inside of the sleeve. So I've pinned it all, and then I'm going to untuck it like this, and I'm going to start at that seam and just stitch very close to the edge to hem it. So there we go. Should need just a little press and then you're done on that. So all that's left now is the hem. There we go. I've overlocked mine and I'm just going to turn it up and stitch it, which is the simplest way. You could do a turn and turn, which is also really nice. But today I'm just going to turn and stitch. There we go. All stitched. Needs a press. There we go. Oh, that looks so much better. Well, here we are. We've done the neckline, we've done the facing, we've done the sleeves, we've done those pleats, we've done the pockets, and we've done the hem. And with any luck, it should look something like this. Enjoy.